Yes, we're going live in 3, 2, 1, and we're live.
Yeah, perfect. Welcome, everybody. Thanks much for being here. Today, we want to talk about central exchanges and decentralized exchanges. Of course, in history, we just had central exchanges. Now, with smart contracts and DeFi, since more than 1 year, maybe approximately 2 years, decentralized exchanges have been drafted, have been implemented, are on the rise. There are some issues here and there, but still, of course, it makes sense to ask the question whether this rise of decentralized exchanges proceeds, such that at some point of time they might replace central exchanges or not. And that's exactly why we have invited a couple of people who are really knowledgeable in this field. We have people from the central exchange, we are architecture systems, for example, Bitmex and Bitmex. We also have people being DeFi experts here, for example, Marcel, Connor, and also Stefan. And therefore, we would like to talk basically both sides of the same matter, how to exchange assets. Is it in the future a centralized world? Is it a decentralized world? Or will we have some kind of mixture in between here? We are doing this panel discussion basically also to promote our DeFi Talents program. The DeFi Talents program is a program which educates people on DeFi issues. It's basically ran by us as the Frankfurt School Blockchain Center. It's a coaching mode model which runs for 3 months, and we are meeting every second Monday in the evening. We are discussing what happened in the last weeks. We are discussing the homework people have been doing. We are assigning new tasks for the people which they then work on, and then 2 weeks later we are discussing what people have worked on. This works quite well, and so, for example, you can basically be convinced by yourself because, for example, Marcel is an absolute expert. He has been in the DeFi Talents program. He will also say a couple of words about this one. And I think, Marcel, I hope I'm right here, you are also enjoying the program. I also feel that you have learned a lot, even though you already knew quite a lot before the program began. So let's get started. Let's do the first round of introductions. I would propose that everybody please presents himself briefly. Please add a little bit of detail. What is your role? What is your position? What is your company? Who are you? And let's get started directly with Marcel. Is this okay, Marcel?
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me. And let's start. So let me explain maybe what I've done in the last months. So I'm a financial service consulting advising banks on topics of blockchain technology and sustainability. And at the same time, I'm a participant of the DeFi Talents program. So I think it's a good idea to let you understand what we're doing in the program. So each Monday, you get some kind of list where you have some tasks and you prepare yourself. And then we have bi-weekly sessions where you can present your findings and discuss your findings with other blockchain people in the space. And for me personally, it's a brilliant idea to get feedback. It's brilliant to network with people, and I'm really enjoying it at the moment, and I enjoyed it in the past. So it was for me a really good choice. So if you want to apply, you can do it. There will be next sessions, and I can really recommend it to you to do maybe the next steps in your career if you want to go into the blockchain space. So maybe a few words what I will do in the future. So I will use the expertise that I got from my consulting career, but as well from the DeFi Talents program to add some value in the space. I'm looking at going deeper into the space, especially into user experience of DeFi applications, and to offer some regulation clarification as well for DeFi. So I will be most likely spend some time in the future as an entrepreneur in doing something in the space.
Excellent. Thanks much for presenting yourself and also some words about DeFi Talents. Who wants to go next? Maybe Connor, would you like to go next?
Of course, thanks. So I'm Connor Payne. I am the head of the Decentralized Finance at Block-Size Capital. What we do is we offer high-end infrastructure to analyze, trade, and manage digital assets. We do this with the help of our smart order router. which connects to multiple different crypto exchanges and calculates the best possible execution price. We also aggregate various types of market data in the process, and we offer that. What I particularly do is I run operations in the realm of DeFi, partnering with projects such as Chainlink to provide data on chain for smart contracts. We primarily operate nodes for the price feeds. So, and that powers some of the largest DeFi applications such as Aave, Compound, Synthetics, SushiSwap, Crypto.com, and there's like many more also. But yeah, so we're doing a lot of cool things, but we're also looking for people also, just a heads up. So please check out our website for the different job postings and everything, and feel free to contact us, for more info there. Last little caveat is these thoughts are my own, so I'm a little biased, obviously, with my passion for DeFi. So just to clarify that. So thanks.
Yeah. That's an interesting point. Of course, we have some people more oriented toward decentralized exchanges, some more oriented toward central exchanges. I think we will see this quite immediately when we start discussing. Stefan, you would like to go next? Okay, then we move on. Maybe Rupertus, can you start presenting yourself? Okay.
I'm sorry, my window just closed for a second, so I can go next. Sorry for that.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. So yes, Steffen Reit, my name. I'm from Capgemini Invent, as you can see in the top corner. I have a background in mathematics. Actually, quite a while ago, I did my PhD in cryptography in the area of security and decentralized systems. So interest for Bitcoin and all the technology around blockchain for a really long time. I'm now in Capgemini Invent. I'm heading the blockchain practice in Germany and Switzerland for Invent. For those of you who are not so familiar with Capgemini, it's the biggest consulting firm in the world with European roots. We are 300,000 people. 10,000 of those are roughly in this in Invent, the strategy part. I would say we are kind of doing technically well-founded strategy consulting. And for the project, so guys, we are hiring for those who might be interested to work in consulting. Main projects currently, we are in public. We do a lot in around the space of SSI, connecting agencies and so on. But we also see more and more movements across the industries, and also, of course, the topic that we discussed today in finance. And excited to look more into the connect between traditional finance and decentralized finance, and therefore super excited to have the discussion here with you guys. And I can definitely confirm that the DeFi talents and the DLT talents programs are, well, I can highly recommend them. We already have a few guys who went through the programs. So yes, go for those programs. Thanks a lot.
Excellent. Thanks much for these words, and thanks also for the compliment on our program. Indeed, it really, we are quite happy with this. It really works quite well. Let's move on to Rupertus from Bitmex. Please also present yourself and your company.
Sure. Thank you, Philip. My name is Rupertus Rotenhäuser. I am the Chief Commercial Officer for Bitmex. I've only started literally 26 days ago. In my previous life, I was the CEO of crypto broker in Zurich and one of the managing directors for CEX Digital Exchange, trying to build the first regulated digital asset exchange and custody supervised by FINMA in Switzerland. My roots go back many, many years, when probably most of the audience people were not even born. I started my career as a derivative trader in the early 90s. And there's actually quite a strong correlation between ex-derivative people and crypto fascinated people in the industry. I made my career change after being plus 25 years in the classic finance world into the digital world in 2017. That was round about the time when Bitmex was rocking the planet with the evolution and invention of the Bitmex perpetual future swap. I think everybody who is dealing in derivatives in the crypto space knows Bitmex and knows our product. Our three founders have invented the product and created the company in 2014. Took off like a rocket in the sky, made the brand extraordinarily strong. But this is why we are currently expanding and executing a new strategic route. You can't survive this battle in the crypto space with just one product. And I guess we will touch some of the pros and cons between CeFi and DeFi is well happening in our world. The derivatives products on its own is not just enough. So we have started a new thing called Beyond Derivative Strategy. So we are currently building a spot broker in Switzerland. We have bought a German bank end of last year. We are expanding regionally with other services. We have created a tremendous tool called Bitmex Academy. So there's a lot of action going on in our company, a lot of initiative, drive, energy, and of course, available positions. So if you feel excited about the crypto space, feel free to reach out to me via LinkedIn or ask Philip for my contacts. We're looking for talents, excited about new technologies all over the place. Thank you.
Perfect. Indeed, Robertus basically has worked in multiple roles already in the crypto fields, also in legacy finance, and it's also fascinating to see basically senior managers moving on to crypto companies. Bitmex is interesting because they also have recently purchased Bankhaus von der Heid, which is one of the oldest banks in Germany. That's also a move which you do not see very often, right? Perfect. Let's move on to Kwon from Bitrex. Please also present yourself and your company.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. It's great to be here with all the distinguished panelists. My name is Kwon Park. I'm the Chief Strategy Officer here at Bitrex Global. I guess a little bit about my background. I was a derivatives lawyer before I started with Bitrex. Been in this space for about 8 years. Bitrex was actually one of my old firm's first clients, and back then we were a very small company, so the firm helped out with a lot of the strategic decision making, token listings, investments, and partnerships, and they brought me in-house in 2018. So I've been with the company for about 4 years now. Things have changed. The way Bitrex looks when I joined the company and the way it looks today, we have 3 companies under the holding company, and there is a technology company that powers all of the exchanges under the Bitrex umbrella, the US exchange, and then there's Bitrex Global. I'm with Bitrex Global. We are located in Liechtenstein. That's where the headquarters of the spot exchange is. We're licensed and supervised by the FMA under the Blockchain Act. So we're part of Crypto Valley. We have a physical presence in Liechtenstein and in Zurich. So, participants in the DLT Talents program and, folks that are interested in getting into this space, especially the young students and professionals out there, I'm happy to connect with all of you, after this and beyond. Thank you.
Perfect. Yeah, thanks for the introduction. Let's directly jump into the topic. Maybe first question to you, Stefan. Where are we right now in terms of decentralized exchanges? Can you basically mention some numbers? How large have they grown? And then afterwards, we are discussing the potential, whether they can grow further or whether there is some limit here for regulatory or technical reasons. What is the state of DEXs at this point of time, Stefan?
Yep. Yeah, sure. Happy to answer that. So if you look the last 1.5 years, this space has really grown. Well, you could say tremendously, but it's still, if you compare to traditional finance, it's considerably small. If you today look up, there are like 350 decentralized exchanges. The total value locked is around 10 billion today. You could say that's an impressive start, but it's still quite small. So you could say that today there's really huge innovation going on in this space, and the protocols that are popping up each day. It's hard to follow up. It's a space with a lot of growth, and well, it's completely uncontrolled. So I would say it's very exciting space with some impressive numbers at the very start, you could say.
Perfect. Maybe Marcel, would you like to add some details here?
Yes, of course. So maybe I think to really understand where we are, it's important to understand who's using maybe decentralized exchanges and centralized exchanges. And that comes from me personally to education. I think especially because of that, programs are really important to educate people and to give the information that everybody has out to the public, so that all people have the possibility to decide from a point of understanding if they want to use a DEX or a centralized exchange. Because from a user experience, it's not so easy to use a decentralized exchange. It's a little bit more technical than a centralized exchange. So to improve user experience and to educate the people are two of the key aspects for me personally.
Yeah, perfect. Thanks. And maybe Rupertus or Juan, would you agree with these numbers? Would you think that that these numbers are significant and that you are basically respectful of these numbers, or coming from your perspective, seeing your own trading volumes, do you see that this is basically negligible?
Let me ask one, then I leave this for you to answer in common as well. To be perfectly honest, 10 billion is a number I would not really consider meaningful. That does not mean I would not consider the technology and DEX as a product meaningful. Definitely, I mean, 15 years ago, 10 years ago, 13 years ago, to be precise, when Bitcoin started, nobody expected it to be where it is right now. Nobody expected the industry to be where it is right now. What I have experienced in the last couple of years is the adoption time from some, and this is with all respect, from some tech-driven, I want to be my own financial manager, I don't trust intermediaries, I don't trust banks, I want to do everything decentralized, me against my counterparty, I don't need protection, I don't need governance. It's time till this is to be productized, how difficult it is to explain and convince and agree with classic finance partners in order to make them touching the classic digital asset crypto space. Now, if you come to them and now tell them, you know what, I'm going to make you inexistent in the foreseeable time, nobody's going to support you. I've seen companies coming and going in the DEX space because they were of the belief and in imagination they can change the world to a better place. And that might be true one day in the future. Right now and here, no chance. Absolute no chance.
Interesting point coming from an adoption perspective, right? Quan, what's your perspective on this?
No, as far as the first point, I agree with Rupertus that the numbers don't really mean anything. I mean, we've seen significant growth in the DeFi space, from the years I've been around. I'm quite shocked that all the centralized exchanges and now decentralized exchanges popping up everywhere. The development has grown. I do think it will get better. Blockchains will get faster, transactions will get faster. Regulators are still looking at centralized exchanges. I mean, they don't even know what to do with us, right? The rules are still coming in jurisdiction by jurisdiction. We have to pay attention to that. And then there was the DeFi, NFTs, metaverse. We've got all of these things touching this blockchain technology. And, I think there needs to be there needs to be guardrails to some degree to make sure that we're creating a safe environment for some of the users that are out there, because this is a market where, yeah, maybe some of the intermediation goes away, and people are able to get direct market access, but there's a reason why there's rules in the traditional space. Maybe we can't fit those rules into DEXs and centralized exchanges and whatnot. But right now, I kind of feel like where we are with decentralized exchanges, and there's definitely room for both centralized exchanges and decentralized exchanges. It's a little bit of what I've seen with centralized exchanges, maybe 3-4 years ago, where there aren't KYC, you don't know who you're interacting with on the other side, and other issues. But I think those are things that will evolve, and I think it's really great for the industry in general.
Maybe one side remark here. When I go back in time, we had Bitcoin emerging, we had the first utility tokens emerging, and then we saw worldwide regulators to immediately inspect this, and to write something and so on, and try to make some regulation there. But then regulators also took quite a while until to come up, for example, in Europe with the MiCA regulation, to come up with a potential solid framework, which is then really a good one for the entire European Union. So it simply, the regulators, they found the phenomenon, right? Because it was there on the market. Then they started to write some initial papers, and then basically tough regulation came up years after discussion, because it really takes a lot of effort on behalf of the regulator to understand it. And then, this is now the question. And then we had the ICO tokens coming out. That's basically exactly the same happening. We had first papers from all kinds of regulators. We then have a couple of years later regulation coming out, and then we had DeFi coming, and then we had the NFT coming. Now we have Metaverse coming. And my personal impression is that the regulator is getting a little bit tired. If I can say this, the regulator is getting a little bit tired, because it's all, there is this new phenomenon. They have to understand it. They have to do meetings and have to do expert hearings. Then they write a paper to really prove that they have understand it, to provide consensus within the authority and so on. Then they start discussions about regulation, which takes years. And then, as we feel in the in the crypto ecosystem, the next thing happens, and the next thing happens. Do you agree with this? Maybe Rupertus and Juan, do you agree with this personal impression here, that the regulator basically still is a little bit tired with keeping up this high speed of innovation, or is this impression wrong?
No, Philip, your impression is not wrong, but I don't think that is a mistake by the regulators. I think the speed of response is accelerating. I think it's always a question to balance out, allow freedom, prosperity, development, creation, and making new markets. And please don't take me wrong, I'm fascinated by the DeFi space and the DEX space. I just do not believe that it's gonna be as quick as people believe it will be. We are now not struggling, but we are debating hefty with regulators, with lawmakers, with law firms, and independent countries. I mean, Switzerland, where I'm currently sitting, is extraordinary, far advanced in terms of regulatory guidance. Germany is picking up, but not really fast. Laws have to be changed, rules and guidelines have to be produced. And believe me, as soon as regulators, central banks, governmental powers would get the feeling and the smell of something while we're losing control, they will be pretty fast. Would only like to remind you, when Libra came out, nobody from the regulators ever considered digital euros, stable coins, payment coins as something that could risk the financial stability and the intellectual property and power of a central bank. Suddenly they say, oh, Jesus Christ, if this guy brings this Libra to all those countries with my French, shitty currency, local currency, and they will replace the currency with Libra, that might become quite an effective tool in order to play a role in the money market environment. And suddenly people were disappearing from the club. Companies who used to be very supportive to Libra and Facebook at the very beginning fell off the balance sheet, fell off the PowerPoint presentations. They were dropping off like so. And you know what? They didn't fall off because they lost their interest in the belief in Libra. It was because they were told by governments and political powers and central banks, do you really consider that being a great idea? On the one side, you're part of our great economy, and on the other side, you're trying to shoot us in the back with an alternative digital currency. But what it did trigger is the initiative of digital euros, digital dollars, digital renminbi, digital whatever it takes. So it needs this initiative and drive and vision of somebody in order to test the limits. And the regulators are actually there to provide a regulatory safe environment, safe for the government, safe for the states, safe for the retail investors, in order not to be misled and misused. And that's why I believe centralized exchanges have advantages and disadvantages. Decentralized is much more for self-directed visionaries and those who really like to act on their behalf against somebody who is equally smart. This is not something that is going to happen overnight.
Yeah, I made this side question to basically also get the regulator indirectly, in their view, because you have some experience there. Quan, you're also coming from the Central Exchange Party. Would you like to agree? The question was, just to recall, the question was, has the regulator become a little bit tired, of all this speed and dynamics and catching up with all the developments?
I wouldn't say tired. I'd actually add that, from I work closely with Dodd-Frank rulemaking, Title VII, and the pace that they move with that versus how fast some of these regulators are moving. And in some jurisdictions they're moving at light speed, right? And I've never seen this before. And the amount of interest and that they're showing, the staff is showing in various countries, I'm fascinated. I'm actually impressed by the attention that they're giving to the space. And I do think there is a balance. Like, they know that this is great technology, what blockchain can do, the potential, but like I mentioned before, it's really all about making sure that we create a safe environment, whether it's custody or making sure we know who people are trading with, to preventing a lot of the illicit activity that people always talk about. I mean, yeah, people talk about it, but they talk about it because it's probably happening in a few places. So they're learning. If I were them, I'd be a little tired too, just catching up with everything that's going on. But at the same time, I do applaud many of the regulators out there for being willing to learn and make sure that they don't move too quickly, because we don't want the innovation to just shut down. Right?
Yeah, excellent point. Okay, now let's go to the people basically promoting decentral approaches, right? You just have heard, Connor and Marcel, and also maybe Stefan, you just have heard what basically people coming from Bittrex, Bitmex are saying. Maybe Connor, you have worked on quite a number of DeFi projects, right? Market data delivery and so on and so forth. What's your opinion on what's just having been said? Do you also believe that it will take a while, or would you say that no, that's a killer technology, we will be much speedier here in case people adopt it? What's your stance on this?
I mean, I guess to address the initial point, which was made by my peers here, the 10 billion total value locked is actually not that impressive. I actually remember I think it was 2020, there was a month when Uniswap, Decentralized Exchange, had more trading volume than Coinbase, and everyone was cheering like, "Whoa, ladies and gentlemen, we have done it. We are now taking over the world. This is the greatest thing ever." So like trading volume actually might be a better indicator than just the total value locked. But regardless, it's still, these are, in the grand scheme of things, these are small numbers. I don't think that there's going to be some quick road to decentralized exchanges taking over centralized exchanges. And in fact, centralized exchanges have and will continue to be incredibly important for the adoption of cryptocurrencies as a whole. To address the point regarding Libra or Diem, though, I think central banks IMF and stuff, they attack this because they see it as a threat to the dollar, right? They see this as a threat to the euro, and that most of the things that we're talking about that we're trading on these exchanges are not actually intended to be a threat to this, right? I mean, if you have Ether, I mean, if Ether isn't meant to replace the dollar, it's meant to be able to use the protocol, right? Same with Solana, Avalanche, all of these other tokens. So we actually, if there is a narrative that these are meant to replace, national currencies, I think that we should steer away from that and just let the innovation sort of happen a bit. But the main point, I don't speak to regulators personally. I would assume they're getting tired. I mean, I work in the space and I get a bit tired. So it's, but yeah, it's a lot to take in. But the innovation will keep coming. Both from centralized entities as well as decentralized entities, but I think we still have a long way to go before we see that any sort of switch happen there if it were to occur.
Yeah, excellent points. Well, to be honest, I'm not seeing central bank seeing basically Bitcoin and so on as a threat yet. I think the key reason is because Bitcoin, from the perspective of central bank, is not a means of payment, because there are you can't pay with it in thousands of points of sales, and it's also not from the perspective of central banks, it's not yet some kind of storage of value function because of the volatility. So my feeling is that on behalf of the central banks, they don't see Bitcoin as a threat because it doesn't match their perception of a means of payment and storage of value. But exactly what Roberto said, in case you have a project like Libra coming up, then this matches perfectly their pattern of a storage of value and a means of payment. And then they are basically getting upset and trying to really understand it. But that's just one remark here, but I also might be wrong here. Maybe Stefan, would you like to add something here, to basically defend decentral technologies, or would you basically agree that it will take more time?
Both. That it takes time. So I would say, we are kind of with decentralized finance where we have been with maybe the start of crypto 10 years ago, I would say. So that's just my rough opinion on that. I think so. Looking more on the overall picture of finance, where will the whole financial service space move? That's something I'm looking at. And to be honest, I see a lot of advantages with the decentralized finance in terms of efficiency, in terms of possibilities that you have in there. At the moment, decentralized finance is an enclosed system. You can only work in there with cryptos. You can lend, you can borrow, you can stake, whatever. It's all there. It's an enclosed world. It will start, but for this, like the Liechtenstein Blockchain Act, which you mentioned, is a great regulatory framework for. It will start to get really interesting once we get a connect to the real world. And there, of course, we need tokenization. So one of the next steps where we now also see the first startups doing that is imagine if you have if you can tokenize your real estate, if you can tokenize whatever, and then you use that as collateral in the DeFi world to lend money. So we are already there. This is starting, but this is just new possibilities which are popping up. So I really think it's a space which will build up over the next years, bring a lot of possibilities, flexibilities. Everything is by nature real time and so on. And nevertheless, I do think it will, take time. It needs to mature. Today is like, this is Wild West. If you are in there, it's crazy. Everybody's copying everybody's protocols, and people, there are all kind of attacks. So this needs time to mature. So therefore, both. I think it's if I look at the target picture of finance, I see there really decentralized finance playing a really big role. But yeah, it will take many years from now until this is regulated and can get mainstream.
Okay, but let's ask the entire round here. Do you, also each of you, do you think decentralized exchanges can gain a significant share of trading volume worldwide? And of course, the definition of significant is the crucial one. Is it 5% or 15% or 25%? But let's keep it a little bit vague. Do you think each of you that decentralized exchanges can take up a significant share of trading volume, or is this not possible, for example, for reasons like ease of use, adoption, regulatory concerns, technical scalability, and so on. Stefan, let's start with you. Do you think significant trading volume can move over to DEXs?
Yes, I definitely think so. I think, and regulation will not. So just to complete also my picture there, you know, it's like when I was a teenager, the first mobile phones popped up, and everybody could get a mobile phone and a number and a SIM card, and it was not regulated at all. Everybody could have phones, and you didn't know who this number belonged to. There was no KYC. And I see it like this today with DeFi. Everybody can enter the space, opening a wallet with his keys. Nobody knows who these keys belong to. But once the entrance point to DeFi is controlled and regulated, then the whole in the space, you don't need to regulate too much, and it can grow, and you can use all the innovations. So with this, I see the technical possibilities in DeFi, and where just DEXs play a major role in DeFi, and therefore I think over the next years they will gain real significant role. Yes.
Yeah. Robertus, what about your opinion?
I don't think they will. I admire the technology behind the DEX. I think the creation of smart contracts will be used in the classic finance in order to improve processes, gain efficiency wins. Anything possible, positive will be used. Will it attract massive amounts of flows, playing a meaningful role in the concert of exchanges? Definitely not. Any exchange lacking proper KYC, AML, leaving only the slightest touch of ignorance, black money laundering, criminal dependency, and source of funds is going to be a no-show. It's not going to work. I'm sorry to say, it's not going to work. And you know what? I'm a full supporter that for those reasons it shouldn't work. But I'm a big fan of what Stefan said in terms of technology evolution. There will be a great breed of technology that can be used in many aspects, and you might even use DEX developed technology in the central exchanges and in classic finance, and there will be a hybrid solution of things, but a pure DEX where the minimum requirement of transparency, fairness, KYC, AML, and regulatory shelter is not given, I don't think it has any future.
Let's hear another word. Marcel, would you say maybe that it might be different? Maybe there are specific areas in the world which are regulated to a lesser degree where this adoption would be possible? Marcel, any ideas?
Yeah, so I really think it depends who will be the users of the future. And I think we need regulation. And I think regulation clarification is really important for companies, entrepreneurs, and investors to come into the space and bring their knowledge and money with them to build maybe new decentralized exchanges and embrace further developments. At the same time, I think the key is to empower people who are not already in the space for, let's say, DEX or DeFi as a whole to better the user experience. I would say from Europe and from the perspective from the United States, I think it won't get so fast a big percentage. It will take some time, and we will have maybe hybrids. But in the long term, I believe in the knowledge and the creativity of people that maybe together with the regulators, we can find a decentralized solution. And I think the people who are regulating today are not the people who will regulate tomorrow. So the regulators are developing and getting a better knowledge, and we can help, all of us can help the regulator to get this understanding. And maybe the regulator in 20 years have a completely different understanding about blockchain technology and how to regulate technology as a whole. So that's my point of view, but it won't be in the next 1 or 2 years.
Yeah, exactly. Marcel, you mentioned a very important point. In case you're discussing such wide-ranging topics, we should sometimes include a time frame, right? Some things we cannot expect in 1 year. Some things, sometimes it will take 10 years, 5 years, 20 years, who knows? And therefore, the question, will DEXs replace central exchanges, if at all makes sense, if at all makes sense, if you would add some kind of time frame, but without a time frame, it would make sense. Juan, would you like to add something on behalf of your role?
Yeah, so that's good points. I mean, I do think Stefan made a good point. Like, what if we can somehow, I mean, it's very hypothetical, and but what if we can somehow, KYC everybody that goes in and interacts in some of these environments, right? Then it's an ideal world. Then these things will work. And I don't know what the right number is in terms of market share for DEXs versus centralized exchanges, and what will make that significant for DEXs to kind of say, oh, like they're here and whatever it is. But you mentioned ease of use, right? One small example, just real life example, like, man, I can't figure out this MetaMask thing if my life depends on it. I mean, I got one, I've tried it. I've had to learn it, but it's difficult. And right now, at least in the short term, for me, I trust having my password and 2FA and having my crypto in an exchange with insurance, and knowing that this exchange is big enough and safe enough to be able to refund me if it does get hacked or something happens, versus me keeping all of my crypto myself in a hard wallet or in a MetaMask or whatever that is. And it's, I guess there's different levels of security there, and what I feel comfortable with, right? I've seen these smartphones. It's kind of an example. So I've seen these smartphones where, they're installing like hard wallets into the phone. I'm like, oh man, like I lose my phone all the time. Like, is this really a good viable product? And maybe there's other things that go into that, but that's kind of how I think about DEXs. I do think though, I wouldn't go so extreme to say that we can't both coexist, because some people are smart and very tech savvy, and they like the use of it today, and how they interact with DEXs and how they're able to list assets on DEXs and do all sorts of cool things that you're seeing out there. But in the future, like I do not know how regulators are going to act and come down on this in 3 to 4 or 5 years, because at this point in time, I don't know if there are third-party service providers that can provide the things that we as a centralized exchange that's been around for 8 years struggle with KYC and all of these requirements, and we're just under so much scrutiny. And to think that DEXs and there's all sorts of things that I think haven't been thought through yet. But I wouldn't shut the door to say, centralized exchanges are better than DEXs and vice versa. I think there's preferences, there's for it's the user, right? It's like, what do they prefer? And I think there's room for both.
I think, if I try to reconcile what has been said, I think much of the discussion circles around the topic of KYC, the users at central exchanges need to be KYC'd. The users of decentralized exchanges should be KYC'd, should be identified if the regulator wants to have it, as he would love to have it, right? So how can we solve this issue? Because whether you would like to KYC everybody or not is also dependent on the corresponding country. There are countries like Germany which have a quite strict regime on KYCing people and crypto assets. Then you have other countries where the KYC topic basically might be handled a little bit softer, right? So I would like to make a hypothesis here, and I would like to hear what's your opinion on this. I could imagine that you have, let's call it, high institutionalized countries like the US, Germany, most of Europe, and so on. And there, everything will have to be KYC'd. Otherwise, things will be closed down or will be hindered from operating and so on. And DEXs and decentralized protocols might still operate in case KYC can be fulfilled. But in case KYC cannot be fulfilled, then this stuff would not be allowed to operate in high institutionalized countries like Europe and the US, to name some examples. But decentralized exchanges and decentralized technologies would still make sense in low institutionalized countries, because there the government might not be strong enough to enforce KYC rules. I hope you get this logic, right? Does this make sense in any way? Because this would then try to reconcile what has been said, because there are high institutionalized countries and low institutionalized countries. Some technologies work here and there, and other technologies work just in specific settings. Does this make sense?
It certainly does, Philip. I mean, it's 100% true what you say. Let's say the growth potential, the acceptance, the adoption is highly depending on the area, the region, the legal environment you're living in. And it's the same thing we have seen, for example, in Africa, sub-Saharan Africa, when Safaricom, from not having access into any state basis load telephone and suddenly becoming a monster provider for SIM cards in Africa. And then the next step, do classic banking? No, but immediately do internet banking. So there are certainly areas of growth and of certain areas of where the system, the technology has his rights to exist, because it's the only thing you have. And it will not disappear. That's another thing. The technology is there, is equally to Ether. I don't think Ether will ever go again away. I don't know if Bitcoin will ever survive for the eternity, but I can imagine that some of the protocols, services that are considered cryptos, but actually carry a very, very valuable business case behind, will not disappear again, because it's already finding its way into the classic business, and not only in the finance world, but as well in smart contracts, in the industrials, car manufacturers using smart contracts in order to allow payments once the cars are delivered from A to B, and all kinds of stuff. So yes, decentralization is not per se bad. I'm not saying that at all. I just don't think it's right there yet, and it will not have a critical mass to build if it's not fully KYC'd and AML'd. I don't even think it needs necessarily a regulatory approval and stempel, but you must fulfill at least the minimum requirements to do order business attitude in order to make sure that you're not getting arrested for providing a service you're not allowed to do.
Yeah, interesting. Connor, what's your opinion here? Does it make sense to have basically a KYC'd DeFi world and another part of the DeFi world where no KYC, no identification was made? Do you think that this makes sense, or is this basically against everything what you have worked on in the last years?
No, it doesn't. It doesn't go against everything. I certainly wouldn't call it it's just less decentralized. I mean, if we actually think about what we're talking here, or we're saying decentralized, right? That means, and it's international. There's no jurisdictions. And when we use even the term KYC, know your customer, like who's customer? Like, this is just code floating in cyberspace, right? This is once it's released, it can just sort of exist. Now, if it's operated by some sort of DAOs and stuff, it's going to be a very complicated thing. Now, I'm not anti KYC or AML. I really am actually in favor of it. There needs to be some protections. But yeah, it's going to be a complicated process. There will, I think, always be this section which is just fully decentralized for the public, and then another part which is going to be more regulated, and access will be, there will be a middleman there. I didn't actually get to address the last point as far as decentralized exchanges picking up some more market share, but just to touch on that real quick, I think the question comes down to, will people actually use the tokens that we're selling on our exchanges? I would hope so, because if they don't, then it's a big problem for everyone, right? So if they actually are using these tokens, that means that they're actually getting more familiar with using wallets and interacting with centralized applications. Hopefully the user experience gets a little bit better and things get faster and cheaper. And if it's the case that people are able to use these things, it's not going to be too difficult for these users to figure out MetaMask, and or whatever else the new thing is, and then use a decentralized exchange, because at that point it's just another app for them. So I think that we will see some market share being picked up, and that's not even just me thinking it should be that way or not. I just think based off of the way it's going, that's how it will be.
Interesting point. So can we agree at this point of time that there might be a world for decentralized exchanges? Basically, there are clusters here and there, depending on specific countries, regulatory schemes, and so on, such that you might have clusters where users are, which would basically where decentralized exchanges can succeed. Does this make sense? So basically, I try to sum it up a little bit to basically reconcile everything. There are spots out there where centralized exchanges are a must, in case you have asset managers transacting and so on. And then vice versa, you might have spots out there where there are users where decentralized exchanges simply make very much sense. Juan, maybe would you like to take an opinion here?
Well, I add to that point. Like I completely understand the whole point of DeFi is someone comes in and they want to do something well for the community, so they, the developing countries and people that don't have access to some of these tokens and some of these assets, right? So I mean, yeah, I don't think there is a jurisdiction there, but I mean, in terms of like someone launching a smart contract and like, how do you regulate that? How do they KYC that? But I do think then it'll be a world where regulators will go after individuals, right, and restrict the way they participate in that protocol via IP or whatever it is. And, then that's going to make them really tired, right? But, that could be the way they regulate this thing. If someone launches a protocol, of course, you can't stop people. I mean, I think the only reason why we pay attention to this versus, cell phones and SIM cards is, and actually some countries, South Korea, I actually need to KYC in order to get a phone number here, but it's not really a transfer of value, right? Well, I guess cell phones and SIM cards in some degree it is, but like we're talking about real movement of money, and like there's tons of things you can do. You can convert these things into central bank, currencies, fiat currencies. So I think that's kind of the difference between that, and it's going to be interesting how this plays out. But I definitely, I work for a centralized exchange, and these are my views only, but I do see the value in decentralized exchanges, and I just want right now, or it's so early still, I just want both to thrive in the market and make sure everyone has
decentralized exchanges also have some governance tokens which are then being traded on your exchange, right? Yeah. So, but if we agree on specific clusters wherever they are that decentralized exchanges are growing, then I would like to ask also one question coming out from the YouTube channel where we are transferring this video to. For example, what are risks of decentralized exchanges and what are potential hurdles such that basically adoption could be achieved in specific subsegments? Stefan, would you like to get started with these points, both risks and hurdles? There could be technology, regulation, whatever.
Yeah, I'm happy to start. Let's start with the risks. The whole field is, it could not be riskier, to be honest. There's, in the questions before, there was front running. I just go through a few attacks, front running mentioned. This is just a small thing where basically if you are the node writing a block, you might have an advantage of writing before or after or whatever, but this is small. There are now the trend for 2022 is kind of everybody is copying each other's protocols because a lot of are compatible, a lot of are EVM compatible, and so groups are copying their protocols, people are investing, they get nice incentives, and then people just disappear. So these rug pulls is for me one of the biggest things. Of course, the DAOs are controlled by, as you said, a governance token. So you might, get advantage by having a lot of influence on the governance. Then you manipulate the smart contracts. So there are all kind of attacks. So the whole space is really, if you invest today, you must be prepared to invest really a lot of time to somehow get a grasp of how risky it is, and still you must be prepared to lose your money, you could say. What could be the hindrance to come to the second point? I think the point is really, it's in the end, it's coming down how the whole thing can be regulated. So it's going a lot back to the discussion that we had. Just to add on this, I really like the picture that we built up, like having decentralized finance with a KYC layer around it, even though, as Connor said, maybe the C in the KYC might not be the perfect wording here. So we need regulatory stability, we need insurances. There is first stuff popping up. Of course, always something can go wrong in centralized finance and in traditional finance. Things can go wrong, but in the end, you're insured that you're repaid for this. So this is starting in DeFi now, but it's not there yet. So basically, you want a secured environment from the regulatory point, and also for all kind of things that can go wrong. Yep.
Perfect. Marcel, would you like to add something here?
Yeah, let me go straight forward to the enablers. So for me, it's the key aspects are regulation, user experience, education, and decentralization. So from a regulation perspective, to sum my point of view up, I think we see something similar at the beginning, like the internet and the darknet, and each user has the possibility to use it. I think in the blockchain space, it will be a little bit more gray than in comparison to the internet. But we see for the next wave of adoption, hybrid models between centralized and decentralized models, because for real mass adoption and to going further, we need some kind of KYC or some new solution. I think that are the two outcomes of that. And the second key aspect for me is the user experience. So we need more users who are not only holding cryptocurrencies, so to give them the opportunity to use decentralized services without that. And I think we see some movements in the NFT space from building social networks and KYC wallet addresses, or allowing users to pay a monthly rate and using a specific blockchain or a specific contract. So there are some thoughts in the space, and I think we will see in a time frame of the next 10 years a lot of innovation in the decentralized space, and regulators will allow innovation as well in a 10-year time frame.
Interesting point. Yeah, perfect. We are on the close to the end. Anybody would like to do some closing remarks on the entire topic? Maybe any aspects you would like to get mentioned at the end of the session?
Maybe one point from my side. So if you want to discuss topics like that, or if you want to go deep into the space, if you want to add value into the space, you can write me on LinkedIn if you want, so that we can discuss different topics. Or if you're a developer and want to add value into space, so I'm always open to discuss those topics, and let's find new solutions for let's say old problems.
Yeah, sounds good. And this also, of course, applies to everybody else in the call. We also have heard that basically many companies are employing, especially Capgemini, Bitmex, and Bittrex. There are probably everything from amazing project managers up until tech guys. Probably everything is needed because your companies are growing. That's fascinating to hear. Maybe one closing word from my side, especially the interesting topic around how does the KYC stuff basically impact how business models are operating in the decentralized or in the centralized world is very interesting. And why is this? Because it's not just about decentralized exchanges, what we are talking about. It's exactly the same discussion in NFTs, DAOs, and so on. Basically, it affects the entire crypto ecosystem. And if you really think it to the end, if regulators have an issue with all this, then if basically money is being laundered and so on, and this then basically could be resolved with KYC if done properly, right? So ultimately, probably it's basically rooted in the identification of customers, how this entire space unfolds in the next years to come. Would maybe Roberto Scron, would you agree with this statement?
Fully agree. That's the piece of magic that needs to be executed. Know your client and make sure that whatever he invests has gotten some kind of regulated, normal, clean origin. That's all we need. And I think then everybody would be happy in allowing technology evolution, technology uplift, and the use of decentralization. I don't think the regulator per se has a problem with decentralization. It's just a question of they should know who deals with who, what risks and what monies are used. That's all.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Last word.
Yeah, I agree. For operators, if there is an operator behind a DEX, KYC. If you're a regulator, I guess KYI, know your individual, and I'll just leave it at that.
Philip, maybe I'll say one last thing too. I know I've been very much on the DEX side, but I'm a happy customer of both Bittrex and Bitmex. I highly recommend both of those platforms too. I'm pretty sure Bittrex even prevented me from sending a transaction to a bad address one time. So big thanks to you guys.
Oh, great. Glad to hear that.
Perfect. So then, thanks very much. I think it was a very interesting discussion. We have to think about it, because it impacts how all this will unfold in the next years. Thanks for being here, and let's talk soon on the next upcoming topics in the next weeks. Thanks much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Take care.
Thank you. Bye.